this lesson, we're going to be talking about the third cause of World War I, and that is nationalism. So, first off, one of the things we need to do is get the definition of nationalism in here. So, here's the simple definition. Nationalism, devotion and loyalty to one's country, a sentiment based on common cultural characteristics that binds a population. Honestly, there's actually a lot more definitions we can put in there, but that does pretty well sum it up. In fact, I'd say the first one is more so the one that sums up devotion and loyalty to one's own country, that you feel a sense of sacrifice to your country in the form of devotion, or just feeling like, yeah, I'm going to do what it takes to help my nation become better, do better, whatever else. Now, this term has been used in a positive sense and in a negative sense for forever, basically, although the term nationalism has not necessarily really been around for forever, but the concept, the idea has been around for forever. And again, there are positive ideas towards it and negative ideas towards it, or uses of it, I should say. I hope I'm saying that right. I was communicating that right, I should say. But here you go. Here, when we look at the positives, like we had a big discussion in class, and I usually always have big discussions in classes leading up to this lesson. Just kind of get it in our minds. Just okay, positives, negatives. Is thinking your country the best a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How can it be a good thing? How can it be a bad thing? And things like that. Or what does it mean to be patriotic? You know. And I like having those discussions because it brings in more of a personal sense to it, kind of the way you view the world around you, and then we can look at some of these things and then apply it to the way people thought about the same concept going into World War I. So, anyways, the positives are, first off, offers a sense of belonging and unity. That's huge. I'm not going to take a lot of time to go into right now, but just I hope that is fair to understand how big that is, to have that sense of belonging and a sense of unity. And it kind of builds up a bit of a safety net around each one of us, where we feel like, you know, we're more okay, we're more safe. We'll get through this type of thing. It's nice to know that other people are around me. So then the next one, people are more likely to be charitable to others who are part of the same nation and are imbued with more of a sense of self-sacrifice. Yeah, we definitely see that. You know, when you feel like you have that sense of camaraderie, you feel like someone else is essentially a part of something you're a part of, and so therefore, you know, helping them out is helping you out in a way as well. That's can be a big deal too. And you know, you definitely get this sense of well, say it right there, charity in place. You know, a sense of service, thinking outside of yourself for the betterment of others. You know, that can come with a sense of nationalism. There are a lot more positives we could put in there, but a lot of them kind of drum down to those two. Here are some of the big negatives when it comes to nationalism. You know, you view that your nation is just superior to others, and that can lead to different forms of prejudice and persecution. In this idea of like us versus you, you're different, you don't belong, we can't have people like this in our society, you bring us down. There's so many different ways to put that. You can fill in the blank any way, which way you see how that works, or maybe you've even seen in your own life. But that can be a negative, basically nationalism. And then second, you get this sense of nationalistic entitlement. And the negative there is, and this always comes up in class. I don't think I've had a class where this doesn't come up in. It's like, it's just, well, a big negative is it's bad to see your country in the light, or not that I say see your country, but just to expect your country to be the best or to be good or something you want to be part of, and gosh dang it, you deserve it. You know, your country owes you something, not you owing your country something. You know, cue the famous quote by John F. Kennedy. You know, see if I can quote this well enough. You know, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You know, that's going more towards that charitable comment on the positive side. But you can see this idea as like, well, if I'm part of this, then gosh dang it, I deserve something. You need to give me something, and that can be a big negative. One of the main big negatives of nationalism. So the main thing I'm trying to point out here is that a little bit like imperialism and militarism, there are positives and negatives. when it comes to it. And one thing I do also feel like I need to point out is with nationalism, there's a trend going on, at least today, at least when I'm making this this video, that all the negatives are remaining with the word nationalism. So a lot of people like to use the term nationalism. They're using it usually thinking of those negative terms, or those negative aspects of it. When we think of the positive aspects of nationalism, we'll use a completely different word. I shouldn't say a completely different word. It's a word that goes along with it, and that is patriotism. And so even though nationalism and patriotism actually share a lot of similarities, just look them up in the dictionary, whatever dictionary, the definitions in the dictionary, that devotion and loyalty to one's country, basically you have the same definition for patriotism as well if you look it up, unless it gets changed, I guess. But that's what we're kind of doing, though. Is like, okay, we're going to leave the negative reasons under the term nationalism. We're going to put the positive effects of this under the word patriotism. And that's just a trend that's going on right now. I feel like I at least need to explain that at this moment, because in the past, a lot of times those two words have gone hand in hand, patriotism and nationalism. So, anyways, that being said, when it comes to World War I, I said this with imperialism, also said this with militarism. At least I think I said this with militarism. When it comes to World War I, it's the negative aspects of these things that cause it. Like, it's just a war where they just, you take the bad of everything and say, that's why we're starting a war. It's just, anyways. Well, here you go. Simply put, like I say here, what's one of the negative aspects that nationalism is a cause of World War I? And that comes in the form of thinking, well, I am better than you are. I deserve to take that from you, or I deserve to keep this from you. You know, if I'm looking at it from the country's standpoint, like from the imperialistic standpoint, Germany was late to the game. It's like we're playing a big game of Risk, and Germany was late to the game. You know, they only got a little pieces here and there. You know, nobody else that kind of claimed their territory is like, we're not going to let you have a bunch here. We're going to keep what we got. And Germany is thinking, well, but we're better than you are. We deserve this more than you do. And by gosh dang it, we're going to prove it that we deserve it from you, by essentially fighting for it. We're going to take you down for this. Whereas the British or the French think along the same lines. We're like, well, we got this because we deserve to have it because we're better than you, and by gosh darn dang it, we're going to keep you from taking it from us. You know, that's, how do I put this, not the best way to think of things. And then you can bring in like that concept, the perspective of the Russians. Like, you guys always keep treating us awful. You always think that we're lower than you. You always keep thinking that we're just not as good as you. That type of thinking. And by gosh darn dang it, we're going to prove you wrong. We're going to let you know that we're the best ones there are. And you've thought about us wrong this whole time. We're going to do it by essentially fighting you. We're going to punch you in the nose. So I hope I'm explaining this well enough, and hope you're getting this idea that when it comes to nationalism being a cause of World War I, it's because of the negative aspects of it. Now, but then I'd also need to point out, and this is one of the reasons why I put those recruitment posters off to the side there, that in actually going to war, you play off the positive aspects of nationalism and patriotism. Like, you know, please be willing to sacrifice for your country. You know, this is something that just needs to be done. You'll be making the world a better place if you do so. And that, you know, and those people that signed up for this idea that they felt like they needed to sacrifice for the country, you can't hold that against them. I know I'm saying that as like an opinion right now, but that was their thinking, and that is an ultimate show of sacrifice right there. You know, you're willing to die for your country. You know, we usually laud things like that, but just hopefully your nation is doing something at least, well, honorable. Anyways, that being said, I'll hit this point more as we move on and start talking about World War I. But right now I'm going to talk about how nationalism, historically speaking, is actually a bit of a new concept. At least I should say a new word. I said this earlier in the lesson, but it's a bit of a new word. The this word nationalism comes around really, arguably, a lot of people point back to the Napoleonic era about 200 years ago. But yeah, if you're British or French, you can point back to the 100 Years' War. But basically what I'm going to is this. If I, especially from an American perspective, if you ask me where I'm from and say you're not from the United States, I'll say, well, I live in the United States, or I'm an American. And it's like, oh, where in America do you live? It's like, well, I live in a state called Utah. It's like, oh, where in Utah I live? And then I would say whatever city I live in. But that's the way we do say things today, is we actually do have a bit of a nationalistic sense to us. You know, I am an American, I am French, I am Russian, I am Chinese, I am Australian, I am South African, I am Egyptian, I am Iranian, just all these different, I've done a bunch of countries going through my head now, just fill in the blank again, put your country in there. You know, we have more of this nationalistic sense in the world today. But hundreds or so years ago, like around the turn of the century, 1900, if you were to ask me that same question, where are you from, I would probably start off with the city that I am from first. And I go, well, where's that? Well, that's in a state called Utah. Oh, where's that? Well, it's in this country called the United States. But you know, there wasn't as much of that there. There was somewhat there, this idea of being an American and things like that, but you're more tied to the region. Case in point, Robert E. Lee from the American Civil War. When push came to shove, the reason why he decided to join the South is, and I quote, "I am a Virginian first," showing that he had more of a tie to just what he viewed as his home of Virginia, the state of Virginia, than he felt like was his duty to, say, an overall country. Definitely not very nationalistic there. So, or patriotic, however you want to put that. At least when it comes to the United States, I should say. Now, but it has been for about the last 150 years, definitely, we've seen this huge surge in this idea of nationalism, where people are starting to feel much more part of their overall country. The two flags I have up here, the United States and Great Britain at the time, both these flags are considered nationalistic flags, and they represent all the peoples that live within that nation. And the people, when they see that flag, they think, I am a part of that. Flags haven't always been that way. By the way, that is a nationalistic flag, and I have flags hanging up in the room, and I like to point this out. And I don't have them in the PowerPoint right now, but that flag has only been around for a little over 200 years, really. And even within those 200 years, it wasn't always flown. Since the French Revolution, there was a time when the monarchy came back for a little bit. But the French had a monarchistic flag that they had for forever. And this is the flag that replaced it. Our nationalistic flag, the American flag, is actually older than the French nationalistic flag. This flag is the nationalistic flag of Germany, although I do have other flags, like their imperialistic flag from World War I in here. And I'll actually have one flag I do have in here. I'll show that's an imperialistic flag for at least Japan. But that's a nationalistic flag. Like when you see all these flags, this is what most flags look like today, where they kind of have these three stripes that represent different things in the way you view your country. But these are all based on this nationalistic flag. But flags in the past, like if I show you this one, or definitely that one, those are more monarchistic, royalistic flags. Although, I should say the flag for Austria-Hungary in the bottom left, which wasn't used for very long, that's both nationalistic and royalistic because it has elements of both. But the flag you see in the bottom right, that's the flag of Russia before they turned to communism, before they become the Soviet Union. Now, that is the flag of the Romanov family, the flag of Russia. And it didn't have as much of a nationalistic appeal to it. It was just, okay, this is who the ruling family is. This is who's in charge, is what that flag really means. So just go over a couple others. The Italian flag, that one's only been around since the 1860s. And we'll talk about that one in a second. I'm going wrong way. There we go. That's only been around since the 1860s or so. Again, very recent. Same thing like the French flag. The German flag has only been really around since the late 1800s, at least that nationalistic one, and now they changed the color of white to yellow, and I'm actually not really sure why. I should look into that one. This flag right here, the flag of, Turkey or the Ottoman Empire, I should say, That is, I guess you could argue, a bit of a nationalistic flag, but it's more of a religious flag because you have the crescent of the religion of Islam, which is the major religion of the Ottoman Empire. Okay. You see that also playing out in this flag, which is also both a religious and a nationalistic flag. You have the nationalistic elements of like the stripes, but then you have the cross there representing the religion of Christianity. That is both kind of a half and half. That's the flag of Serbia at the time, World War I, where you get both of the royalistic aspect as well as the nationalistic aspect. That's the flag of Bulgaria, Portugal, Bulgaria nationalistic, Portugal royalistic and nationalistic. The Japanese flag, that is seen as more of an imperialistic flag. I mean, kind of like under this sign shall you conquer type thing. Oh, that's a quote from Constantine, way back when, Eastern Roman Empire, or Roman Empire, sorry. And then there's a nationalistic flag from Romania. Again, a fairly new one, late 1800s, early 1900s. Actually, pretty sure that's late 1800s when they came around with that as well. So I guess the main point I'm trying to put out there is like a lot of the flags we see today, they're fairly new with this newer idea of nationalism throughout the course of world history. Whereas most flags before that were more kind of on the royalistic side of things. So anyways, I'm going to leave that there. That's the lesson for this point, and in our next lesson we will talk about entangling alliances, the last cause of World War I, the last major cause of World War I.